Even though we hadn't seen each other for a month, Scene said nothing about my health. Instead, he simply demanded a divorce. I want a divorce from a wife who neither does household chores nor works. Don't expect any share of the property, he said with a smirk. Jessica stood beside him, grinning and clinging to his arm. All right, a divorce it is, I replied calmly. Scene looked surprised, but then he and Jessica exchanged smiles. Thankfully, Scene's thoughtless nature worked to my advantage, allowing my plan to proceed smoothly. After the divorce, I began executing my revenge plan against them. By the time it was complete, my health should have improved, and their regretful faces would be my victory. I'm Sophie, 47 years old, an illustrator and picture book author. Drawing has always been my passion. I have two childhood friends, Shawn and Jessica, both very important to me. Shawn is also my husband. It all started after high school when I was the only one who went to a different university. That's when Shawn asked me out. I had always thought he had feelings for Jessica, so his confession took me by surprise. I was secretly in love with him, so I was overjoyed. Before starting our relationship, I consulted Jessica. She had always been somewhat of a troublemaker, often coveting what belonged to others and causing issues which worried her parents. Despite this, Shawn and I tried to include her in our lives as much as possible. I married Shawn at 25, but 4 years later, Jessica suddenly introduced her fiancé Matt. He was a well-mannered man who quickly became close with us. We spent holidays together, enjoying trips and discovering our favorite drinks. I thought our relationship was solid, but about 2 years after Jessica and Matt's marriage, things began to deteriorate. The trouble started when Jessica became pregnant. Shawn and I had decided not to have children. We liked kids but preferred to focus on our hobbies, such as drinking and traveling. We admired families with children but were content without them. However, Shawn's behavior changed dramatically after learning about Jessica's pregnancy. He quit smoking, which he had stubbornly refused to do for my sake, just because Jessica mentioned the smell. He even took paid leave to drive her to the hospital, clearly going beyond what a childhood friend would do. You know, if you stay too close to Jessica, Matt might feel uncomfortable. I warned him. You're busy, right? It's terrible how indifferent you are, even when a pregnant friend needs help. He retorted, I'm trying to help out. I do the shopping and run errands. I think accompanying Jessica to the gynecologist is a bit much, though. I argued, if she's scared, she should have Matt go with her. Going with her every time makes it seem like you're the child's father. You're not going to be pregnant anytime soon, so what does it matter? Shawn dismissed my concerns. We rarely fought before, but since Jessica's pregnancy, our arguments increased. This tension continued after Jessica's delivery, with Shawn spending more time with her and her child. When Maya turned 5, an incident occurred the night before her preschool graduation. Shawn was rummaging through the bedroom closet. What's wrong? Do you have a business dinner tomorrow? I asked, noticing his suit thrown carelessly on the bed. His workplace had a casual dress code except for formal meetings. No, I'm deciding what to wear for the graduation ceremony, he replied. Wait, you're planning to attend Mia's graduation? I protested loudly. Matt can't make it, and Jessica asked me to come, he said. That's just wrong, I protested, causing Shawn's expression to sour. I was aware that Scene sometimes picked up Mia from preschool, and I had also helped out occasionally. That level of assistance was acceptable, but it seemed out of place for a father's friend to attend a graduation ceremony in his stead, even if they were childhood friends. Are you still questioning my relationship with Jessica? Scene asked, disappointment in his voice. You can't be more supportive. It's not about that, I replied firmly. Regardless of what you say, I'm going to the ceremony tomorrow. Don't forget to iron my shirt. With that, Scene abruptly ended the conversation. Left with no other option, I reached out to Jessica. Hello, Jessica. About tomorrow? Oh, tomorrow? Yeah. I'm borrowing Scene, Jessica interrupted. Thanks, but won't Matt mind? I asked, concerned. What are you talking about, Sophie? I haven't even told Matt about the graduation. I'll let him know after it's over, she said. I was stunned. Jessica hadn't informed Matt about any preschool events, and it seemed like Shawn was being passed off as the father. What are you thinking? This is incredibly disrespectful to Matt, just because you and Shawn are childhood friends. Hey, what's wrong? You sound kind of scary, Jessica said. Well then, I'm counting on you for tomorrow, she added before abruptly hanging up. Fuming with anger, I still ended up ironing Scene's shirt, preparing his tie, and sending him off properly to Maya's graduation ceremony the next morning. After this incident, Jessica and Scene began spending more time together. What had been a monthly occurrence soon turned into weekly outings, and before long, they were meeting every 2 days. Matt seemed to notice something was off. One evening, when Scene and Jessica were out, Matt came to my house. "I'm sorry for dropping by so late, but something's been bothering me," he said. "Is it about those two?" I asked. "Yes," Matt replied, showing me GPS records he'd installed in Jessica's car. The records revealed that they had visited a lodging facility about 3 times a week, always on days when Scene was out with Jessica. The implication was clear from Matt's expression. "What do you want to do?" I asked. "I want to take revenge on them," Matt said. "I can't forgive them for betraying us after all this time." I felt the same way. We secretly began planning our revenge against Scene and Jessica. My first step was to focus on increasing my income. After getting married, I had reduced my work to focus on household duties, which significantly lowered my income. Matt transitioned to working from home, and whenever Jessica and Scene were out, he would bring Maya to my house so we could take care of her together. Unaware of our arrangement, Jessica and Scene made it easy to gather evidence against them. Just as we were ready to execute our revenge plan, we were stunned to learn the truth about Mia. After much deliberation, Matt and I decided to postpone our revenge until Maya reached adulthood. We didn't want to hurt her while she was still young. However, 10 years later, I was struck by a serious illness. It wasn't unusual for me to be hospitalized for a year or two, and though I could work from the hospital, I had to significantly reduce my workload. I immediately informed Matt of my situation and discussed it with Scene. "I see. I'll come to visit you sometimes," Scene replied casually, showing no real concern for my condition. His indifferent attitude made it painfully clear that he no longer cared about me. It seemed true, as he visited only once or twice a month. As time passed and Maya turned 15, she had been visiting me almost every day since my hospitalization. However, after her 15th birthday, something felt off. I asked Matt if he knew anything, but he didn't seem to know either. When I inquired with Mia, she simply told me not to worry about it. We were left in suspense, but the truth was eventually revealed by Scene, who unexpectedly came to visit me in the hospital. "Hey, it's been a while," Scene said as he entered the room without knocking. It had indeed been a month since we last saw each other. During that time, Scene had changed significantly, becoming quite flashy. Jessica followed him in, showing no concern for my health. "I'm divorcing you," Scene announced. "You don't do housework or have a job, and there will be no division of property. Sophie, please take care of this," he said with a smirking smile, while Jessica clung to his arm. "All right, a divorce it is," I replied calmly. Scene was surprised by my readiness but quickly exchanged smiles with Jessica. Scene's straightforward nature played to my advantage, allowing my plan to proceed without any issues. After the divorce was finalized, I began my revenge plan. By the time it was complete, I hoped my illness would have improved, and their regretful faces would be my reward. I called Matt to inform him of my transfer to another hospital and that a lawyer would handle any dealings with Scene and Jessica. Matt moved closer to my new hospital and continued bringing Maya to visit me regularly. Despite Mia's sadness, her daily visits brought me immense joy. Meanwhile, I instructed Jan to dispose of the belongings I had left behind in my house. I had already moved all my personal belongings to the hospital room and wanted to ensure that nothing was touched by Scene or Jessica. After settling into my new hospital and Matt's relocation, I received a call from Scene. Despite only being away from my room for a few minutes, I found 30 missed calls on my smartphone. Annoyed, I answered when the phone rang again. "Yes, what is it?" I said. "Hey, what the heck is going on?" Scene's voice was agitated, and I could hear a confused real estate agent and Jessica yelling in the background. My mood darkened further. "What do you mean? What's going on?" I replied. "The house. Why are we being kicked out?" Scene demanded, raising his voice and clearly refusing to acknowledge any responsibility. I remained calm. Of course, after everything that's happened, it's only natural that the room I rented would be canceled. You seem to have forgotten that the space we lived in was rented by me for work. When I started working independently, I couldn't afford a separate workspace, so I rented a room that served both as a home and an office. Scene, whose income was insufficient to live alone, ended up living in that space. However, he never paid rent or utility bills for the room. While he did provide monthly living expenses, they were never enough to cover the costs of maintaining the space. It's unfortunate, but the room is no longer available. The hospital I transferred to was quite far from the house, and after the divorce was finalized, I had no intention of continuing any ties with the property. I proceeded with the cancellation process without contacting Scene, as the real estate agent who understood the situation had promised to handle it for me. It seemed that Matt and Maya had also suddenly disappeared, and their house might have been sold. What are we supposed to do now? Where will we live? Scene's frustration was evident. Well, you might have to stay in a business hotel for the time being, I suggested, starting to work on my smartphone with the speaker mode on. Scene, clearly irritated, demanded, "Don't be ridiculous. Pay me $2,000 a month as an apology for selling the house." I was taken aback by his unreasonable demand and stayed silent. Scene's voice grew louder. "Hey, don't just stay quiet." I coldly responded, "No way am I paying you any money." Scene looked momentarily stunned but quickly raised his voice again. My patience was wearing thin. "We're divorced and no longer have any ties. Don't contact me anymore. We'll communicate through our lawyers from now on. Wait for their contact." "What? A lawyer? Hey, wait, Scene tried to continue, but I cut off the call, no longer interested in his complaints. After ignoring several repeated calls, they eventually stopped. Scene, perhaps annoyed by my silence, began avoiding any contact from the lawyer as well. His childish behavior was frustrating, but I had expected it. Months later, after a temporary improvement in my health, I visited Scene's parents' home. Scene and Jessica were there, looking anxious. "You're being unfair talking to my parents like this," Scene said. "I just came to inform them of the divorce," I replied. Scene glared at me for a moment, but then shrank under his father's stern gaze. I had been close to Scene's parents. We often went out and had meals together even when Scene wasn't present. Given how well they treated me, I felt it was important to explain the situation. "Scene, I've heard everything from Sophie. Is it true that you're remarrying Jessica?" Scene's father asked. "Yes, Jessica, Mia, and I are starting a new family together," Scene replied. "What are you thinking? Your family is Sophie. She's not your family anymore," his father said, frowning. Scene shook his head, seemingly resigned, and handed me some documents. "These are the bills from a luxury hotel we stayed at." "What's this?" I asked, confused. "It's the bill for the hotel," Scene said, pointing at the documents as if it were obvious. But before I could respond, his mother slapped him, causing him to fall to the ground. She stood there, panting, her hands still raised. "What are you doing? I didn't raise you to behave like this," she said. Scene's furrowed brow indicated his shock at his mother's reaction. Jessica beside him wore a similar look of confusion. "Why are you so upset? Scene's family is just going through some changes. Plus, you're getting a grandchild related by blood. Aren't you happy about that?" "Related by blood? You can't be serious," I replied, staring at Jessica in disbelief. My in-laws had always treated me as their own daughter, even though they knew I didn't want children. They had also cherished Jessica as she was my son's childhood friend. I knew my mother-in-law would be deeply displeased with the situation, and Jessica should have understood that. "You've always loved Mia. Now she's going to be your granddaughter. You should be happy about that," Jessica said. "She's the child of someone I've known since she was little. Of course she's dear to me. But she's also Scene's child," I responded. Jessica showed no sign of remorse and seemed genuinely puzzled by her lack of understanding, which was unsettling. Then Mia, who had been silently fiddling with her smartphone in the corner, spoke up. "Stop it. It's disgusting," Maya said without looking up. "My father is only my dad. Whether or not we're related by blood doesn't matter. Scene attended all the events for you. I know all about them from Dad, who always said I was his daughter. I'm his daughter, not yours." Mia then sat next to me, on the verge of tears. "I was worried you'd hate me when you found out, but Dad assured me you wouldn't. That's why I came here." "I see, Mia. I loved having you visit me in the hospital every day," I said, embracing her. "I could never hate you. I love you very much, Mia." As I spoke, Mia, visibly relieved, hugged me tightly. Despite the fact that Maya was the child of Shawn and Jessica's affair, she was the girl I had cared for over the past 15 years. It was impossible not to feel affection for her. Turning to Jessica, I asked, "Didn't you find it odd that I wasn't surprised to learn Mia is Shawn's daughter?" Jessica gasped in surprise as another person entered the room. Matt. His sudden appearance clearly unsettled Jessica. She had been seeking a divorce from Matt recently, citing irreconcilable differences. I was truly shocked when you proposed divorce. Let me remind you that we're still not divorced. You haven't filed for it, Matt said, addressing Jessica. Jessica had assumed Matt would handle all the divorce proceedings, which was typical of her tendency to leave everything to others. So Jessica is still my wife, and Maya is still my daughter. After the divorce, she won't be my wife anymore, but Maya will always be my daughter. Jessica turned to Mia, who frowned and clutched my hand tightly. I don't want to be her daughter anymore, Maya said firmly. Jessica was at a loss for words and glared at me angrily. Meanwhile, Shawn began laughing loudly. I see, so you two are like that, but even so, you can't live on Matt's income alone. Don't misunderstand, I interjected calmly. Matt's income is actually twice what Jessica thinks it is. Shawn scoffed. No way. You're joking. Plus, with your illness, it's impossible for you to work alone. It'll just be a miserable end. Shawn's misunderstanding made me laugh, which only fueled his anger. Oh, you didn't know about my income? I asked. Shawn replied dismissively, it's probably not much anyway. Actually, I make $900,000 a year, I stated. Shawn's eyes widened, and he stood there, mouth agape in shock. Jessica was equally motionless. Over the past 10 years, I had gained recognition as a children's book author. I had published essays, been interviewed, and soon one of my works would be made into a movie. My income had skyrocketed. That's a lie. It's not possible, Jessica said. I showed Jessica my smartphone, displaying my bank account deposit records. The large monthly deposits left her speechless. Hey Sophie, let's try again, Shawn said, but his desperation was palpable. I watched their reaction with a detached gaze. If you two are planning to remarry, feel free. It's your life, I said, ignoring Shawn's protests. Holding Maya's hand, I greeted my in-laws and left their house. Later, I learned that Shawn, who had been working at my father-in-law's company, was often out under the guise of business and eventually got fired. He tried to contact me several times, but I reported it to my father-in-law, which led him to stop reaching out. Jessica, after divorcing and losing custody, seemed to lose interest in Shawn, who could no longer afford luxuries. She stopped pursuing him and was disowned by her family. With no full-time job prospects and a tendency to push responsibilities onto others, she struggled to find stable employment and was getting by on multiple part-time jobs. Since starting high school, Maya had been diligently studying every day with hopes of attending a prestigious university abroad in the future. Her serious personality led her to express a dream of translating my picture books and spreading them around the world. As for myself, the picture books I had illustrated were being adapted into an anime, and I was receiving proposals for merchandise. My health was steadily improving, though I remained hospitalized. My doctor mentioned that I might be able to be discharged next year. With hopeful anticipation for our future, I continued to write stories every day.